Well, Nick, you know that we had those discussions over the last year, and as far as, as I understood, because I wasn't part of the actual discussion, it ended up financially us not agreeing. If we wanted to reopen those negotiations to change the position on the price, we'd be happy to do that.
It's free.
All right. That sounds like a change of position to me. CC/SA will still be a bit of an issue for us. Because I think, as everyone realises, the issue with CCSA is it's potentially far too granular for what we want to do. It doesn't recognise, it's designed for artistic work, it's not designed for a database, and the granular nature of the database. So I think until we sort out what an open database license looks like and takes into account the fact that the database is made of numerous edits by numerous individuals, all who are licensing the information in the same way, I think that's a little bit of a grey area. But as far as I understood, the issue was more financial than around license. I think if we can agree a price, then we can agree the license.
More questions?
Do you think that Google's culture and the way that it talks to people and the way that it doesn't pre-announce products gets in the way of Google's relationships with open source projects, specifically things like Wikipedia and Knoll, OpenStreetMap and then Warden?
Yeah, I think there's a broad truth in that. I think we do a much better job communicating. It's one of the very few negative, I think, aspects of Google's culture is that sometimes we can be a bit too reticent about talking to people. I think we're slowly getting better at it. We are much more involved in many open source projects. The whole Code with Google thing, I think, is a very positive way of doing things. But there's still quite a long way to go to us being more open. And I'm sure, in hindsight, we could have handled this much better than we did in terms of how we announced it and how we dealt with various communities. But we move on, we try to keep doing better. And as I said, in this case, we certainly didn't want to build an alternative to OpenStreetMap. Almost everyone at Google in the geo team is completely supportive of what you guys are doing. We love it as a project. We want to see its success. What we're doing with MapMaker is solving one very specific issue that we have at this point in time, and we hope that that's not going to derail what you guys are doing.
John, you mentioned that you're watching what's happening with the license and development of the license. Are you contributing to them?
We haven't at this point in time. If there was a way that we could, I think, yeah, we probably would do.
Yeah, do you have any lawyers?
We have loads of they're all very busy, so it might be that there are better ways of us helping the process rather than using one of Google's lawyers. But yeah, I mean, if there's a way that we could help in that way, let's talk about it. So I think it's something that will benefit the whole community sorting out this issue once and for all.
Peter.
Let's move the Isle of Man debate on a little bit. We've sorted out the financial difference of doing a thing. I'm not quite sure who we is, whether we is the OpenStreetMap Foundation, OpenStreetMap or CloudMate, but there was financial getting going.
I think it was open.
Can I just clarify that we CloudMate offered the data sets. We never went into negotiation about price. We're now giving it CC by SA. So the mapping was done mainly as a test to see whether we could go in a week and see if we map somewhere.
Okay. Now, the question is, we've solved financial negotiations, licensing negotiation. I believe you've licensed it under the new license.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you guys sort out the new open data license and then you have a deal?
And that would get a Google lawyer to put it in, because you wouldn't take the data without checking out the license by one of your lawyers. And everybody's happy. We could take a look at that. I mean, I must admit, sorry Nick, the Isle of Man isn't a priority now. But I think, yeah, we should look at that.
we won't know whether our license is suitable for commercial use unless commercial people
Absolutely right.
validate it.
Yeah.
Part of our validation is to go to the Mockup and the Google of this world and say, will this work? And if you guys haven't got time to look at it, we can't sign it off.
No, well,
That's absolutely essential.
I think morally we're obligated to look at it now. I think we need to do that because we need to move this forward. So yeah, we should do that. See.
Do people have a specific problem with attribution?
Not with attribution. I think the issue is who are we attributing. When we're attributing OpenStreetMap, by attributing OpenStreetMap, are we actually attributing a people that have the rights to the data? The little bottom right-hand corner of Google kind of names the people pop in and out. You zoom in and out of the map. A very cool fashion, which must have taken someone quite a lot of work. So I'm fairly sure you don't have a problem with attribution in general. No, absolutely, we can't. The question is whether the legal framework is there to attribute to a body, a collective body, as opposed to having that thing pop out and the amount of names cover the entire map. Or, Frank who captured that particular segment actually doesn't want to contribute that particular segment. And our nightmare would be that Fred pops up 2 years later when this is on 100 million different devices and say, actually, you owe me a royalty of 5p for every device. That's our nightmare, and that's where our lawyers very unpleasant circumstance. That's what we're trying to avoid.
From your to the back.
Yeah, I can come back to this satellite imagery thing. What I don't understand is in Google Earth, in Google Maps, the My Maps feature, there was a feature of explicitly using the satellite image to put points on there and polygons and all that, which is digitizing from the satellite imagery. And you said you're not allowed to do that.
No.
Millions of people are now doing it through your tool. So what is?
It's slightly different. You capturing say the location of your favourite pizza restaurant and putting a dot on the map is different, or at least it's different in the eyes of those people that license the data, from you tracing the outline of a particular motorway and saying that's the M4. So one thing,
and you can also take out and motorway people are doing that.
One seen as a derived work, one is you putting some information that you have knowledge on in context. And they are seen at this point, and yes, kind of a grey area, but they are seen as different activities that should be licensed differently.
Can we somehow clarify where things are in this grey area? Because it could mean that millions of people in the world, when not using your tools, are doing something that's illegal.
Our belief is that if you're sticking a pin on the map or you're drawing where you went for your holiday or the route that you cycled, that's not an issue. But if you go out and explicitly trace some data to produce a derived product from that image that you will then distribute onwards, then that is a different case. That's our understanding of the licensing position of the imagery provider. Now, we don't want to argue with that necessarily because we're quite happy with what we got at this point in time. And if you want to set up case law and take that test, by all means, but it's very, very grey area and potentially an expensive one to prove legally.
I think we can take one more question and we'll go for a break. Mark.
When you were thinking, right, we need to develop this piece of software internally, what made you think people externally would actually do this kind of thing when the framework already exists within the open community? What made you think this is going to work for us as a company when the facility is already there?
Basically the reason we did it ourselves was it exploits our infrastructure. And the infrastructure that we built, both from the client point of view, but also the back end infrastructure.